Is the Kremlin trying to explain away the rebellion of its largest paramilitary group? And is Ukraine preparing for more offensive operations? I'm Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran. It is July 4th, 2023. This is your daily Ukraine update. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's talk about the control map. Now, they're reporting just minor frontline updates. You can see these look like more like refinements of control. You can see there's a little bit of Russian forces remaining in this forested area here, as well as part of this windbreak here outside of Kurdyumivka. Other than that, we're looking at really just very minor updates, nothing really confirmed, though we know that changes in control do not necessarily reflect the intensity of the combat. As we've talked about, there's considerable combat going on across the front lines. Reportedly, Ukrainian troops are also pushing in the direction of Lyman, right? Kremina Lyman here, area that was very active during the Kharkiv offensive, and was one of really where Russian forces finally were able to establish some stability after the chaos of the Ukrainian offensive outside Kharkiv. You also, of course, have heavy fighting taking place in and around Bakhmut, Avdiivka, all along Zaporizhzhia, and reportedly an increase in the number of crossings of the Dnipro by Ukrainian forces. Now, if you're curious about what this combat's looking like, of course, you want to check out combatvetnews.com. This is the site that I launched because Patreon doesn't care for Ukraine content anymore. YouTube, of course, regularly demonetizing my content. So in order to continue to bring you guys combat analysis and to give you guys an opportunity to support what I do, keep me independent. As you know, a lot of sponsors won't even touch this content. But again, I believe that what I do is essential. And if you want to support me, this is the best way to do it. Any one of these tiers is going to get you access to an exclusive room on the Discord, which is, functionally it's an OSINT source at this point, compiling all sorts of news, rumors, and speculation on the conflict, as well as access to the members-only content, which includes all my analysis of various combat videos, whatever videos go viral during the week. I try to usually do 1 to 2 videos a week, keeping you guys up to date on the latest. The most recent video we saw was Ukrainian forces navigating a minefield. And, it's one thing to see how slow progress is and kind of scratch your head. But when you see how devastating and challenging it is to navigate even a small minefield, you realize that the progress they've made is actually pretty incredible, right? And while I'm certainly critical of the planners and the generals who are running this operation, you see these videos and you're reminded that the Ukrainian forces fighting this fight are absolutely committed and absolutely just laser focused, not only on accomplishing the mission, but protecting each other. Anyway, be sure to check it out. The link is going to be up here, is in the description, and in a pinned comment at combatvetnews.com. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about some of the politicking of the Kremlin. And you know that it was very embarrassing for Putin to have this rebellion come so close to Moscow with minimal resistance. So he's made a couple of efforts to shore up the support and perceived stability of the Russian state. So, one, Russian mill bloggers have actually seized on Ukrainian activity on the east bank of the Dnipro, calling for an increase in small river vessels and equipment to stop further Ukrainian advances. Okay, to be fair, Ukraine, these river crossings, they are not part of larger advances, at least not at this time as far as I can tell. Instead, what they are is, again, sort of like the operations of the Freedom of Russia Legion. They are cross-border raids in order to fix or force Russia to commit its troops to maintain troops in this region so that they cannot reinforce troops along Zaporizhzhia. But it is not part of a invasion force, right? You cannot have thousands of troops cross in dinghies. It's just not feasible. It would be far, far too obvious for anyone. But it is worth noting that in many cases, this river is much more crossable than it had been. Simply because the flooding that occurred when Russia, or the dam, the Dnipro River Dam was destroyed by, unspecified actors, Russia. Those floodwaters have receded, and largely it is much easier to cross the Dnipro than it ever has been in this conflict. So, of course, looking at that, right, they really want to create this Dnieper flotilla, a special river military unit. But that is going to divert precious resources away from Russia's main war effort. Now, what I thought was interesting is, of course, let's see if we can find it here. Of course, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu reiterated, of course, rhetoric about the current state of the war in Ukraine, but did not name the Wagner Group or Prigozhin while discussing the, quote, provocation. Instead, he denounced the rebellion and credited the loyalty of the Russian military as the reason for the rebellion's failure. Again, I maintain, while the coverage was not clear, I never saw any evidence that beyond the Russian aerospace forces, who launched a number of strikes against the Wagner convoy and took a number of casualties, I never really saw any evidence that the Russian military was actively resisting the Wagner Group in any way, shape, or form. But I think they're trying to spin the narrative and to create the perception among the armed forces that they were loyal, that there was no defections, that there was no laying down their arms and flipping over to the Wagner Group. I think that narrative is really important because if members of the armed forces believe the armed forces supported Wagner, they're going to feel emboldened to support future attempts at coups or simply support Prigozhin in other ventures. Very dangerous for the Kremlin. And also, we see Putin is on a tour now, reassuring Asian allies of Russia's stability after the mutiny. This is his first appearance at an international forum since the recent coup attempt. He emphasized that there was a united front demonstrated by Russian political circles and society in response to the mutiny, which, again, I think is mostly narrative and shaping, because we've also heard that there is an ongoing purge in political circles, removing people who were not part of the united front. So sort of... you cannot have both of those things be true, right? That there was no cracks in the political circles and simultaneously punish cracks in the political circles. But what he's doing is aiming to publicly remove doubts about his authority on the world stage. After all, if you are an Asian nation and you're looking to join a Russian-oriented or Russian-backed cooperative organization, you're going to think twice, because why would you want to align yourself with a state that can barely maintain its capital from even its own forces, right? You're simply just not going to believe in that, right? You're going to look for other more stable allies like China or the United States. So anyway, guys, that's really all I had for you. Thank you so much for joining me as always. And a huge thank you to our Colonel tier members. You guys really are the ones who make this whole thing possible. And a huge thanks to our Lieutenant tier members. So many of you guys, and I appreciate each and every one of your support, keeping me independent, keeping me able to do this every day. And I will see you guys in the next one.